A long time ago, in counties far, far away, Collier and Lee are but fledgling legal communities, with legal greats battling it out in the old courthouse. Stories passed down through the ages come to the Calusa and Michael R.N. McDonnell Inns of Court in our Between Two Palms podcast series. So sit back, relax, and enjoy legendary stories from both the bench and the bar. Very, very simple question. What is your name?
Redford Sturgis, but I go by Red.
Hi, my name is James Adams.
Yes, I'm Bob Shearman.
I'm Ted Tripp.
My name is Cynthia Ann Pivacek.
Buenos dias, everyone. Ramiro Manuelich. Don't use a middle name.
My name is Jose Jimenez. John Cardillo.
All right, wait, what do I need to know now? Cardillo, I'm not going to be funny like Cardillo because he's a freaking hoot. Jason Hunter Korn, which I like to use.
My name's Henry Darling, a.k.a. Ruby Slippers. Tell us about your career a little bit.
Well, I started off in the state attorney's office for about 5.5 years and then went into private practice. And I tried to represent people who didn't have a prior record.
I came to Lee County in 1982. I started working at the public defender's office in 1992. I ran for office and was elected as a Lee County judge.
Primarily involved in the trial of significant business disputes.
Civil trial stuff. I represented a lot of governmental entities, law enforcement agencies, cities, handled a lot of personal injury claims.
My practice was in criminal law. I was a state attorney both in Gainesville and then in Naples.
Circuit judge, and been there since 20 years now. First started as a county court judge for 5 years, followed by circuit in the last 15.
For 52 years here in Naples, I did mostly trial work.
Business litigation and board certification in construction law until I don't take the CLE, so I've got another year to get those done.
Last time that you met the Inns of Court was when you were being deposed, and I think that might have been the last interview that you had before arriving to your current location.
I got totally hosed. I got a jailhouse lawyer working on that, but do you know anybody?
Well, I do know a very good appellate lawyer. He just went off on his own. Usually just handles civil cases, but he may make an exception for you.
Oh, word. Yeah, you got to send him over to me.
So when did you move to Southwest Florida, and what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the time that you've been here?
What's changed? Everything. I mean, I've been here over 50. I just celebrated 50 years in the bar. So I've been here forever. Everything's changed. The whole downtown has changed. The way the court system works has changed. Nothing but change.
When I got here in 1982, I think the population was roughly around 300,000. Now it's almost 900,000. At the same time, there's been a substantial increase in the number of women lawyers that's been a member of the bar. I think there were just a few when I got here.
The number of lawyers, number of judges is dramatically increased. We used to ply our trade in what is now known as the old courthouse, and that was a much more collegial and less institutional venue in which to practice law.
Been here since 1989. Raised my family here, so I feel like Fort Myers is home. The number of people, the number of lawyers. The biggest change personally has just been there's a lot more folks here.
I transferred here in about 1978. Back then, everybody was allowed to smoke. Then Jerry went through his chewing tobacco where he would actually do it picking a jury. It was different back then.
I arrived in 1989, and I think the biggest changes I've seen are the challenge of managing growth and population increase.
I came here November 19th, 1972. One is technology, tremendous speed. Everything is fast, and you really have to reserve yourself. The number of lawyers here.
And we moved down here in 1995. Big change from New York to Naples.
Oh, son, I've been running it from MLK to Port Royal since Bonita Springs was just a bait shop on the beach. I can do it anywhere.
The bait shop on the beach? Are you talking about master bait and tackle?
Oh, yeah. It was a different generation. It was real hands-on, and it was just a different time.
Well,
why did you decide to become a lawyer?
I like building something rather than tearing it apart. And so that's why I became a prosecutor.
Independence and the ability to help people along the way at the same time.
The honest answer to that is So I was getting the GI Bill. And it occurred to me that if I was no longer in school, I would no longer get a check from the government. Applied in a fit of chutzpah to Harvard and Florida State, and Florida State let me in.
I think my parents would probably tell you it was genetic, not because they were lawyers, but just because I think as a kid they said I always had an answer for everything.
So I wanted a career that I would be financially independent. And then I also wanted a job that if I worked hard, then I could create my own destiny.
Pursuit of justice through the law. And equal justice under laws, as is inscribed on the U.S. Supreme Court entryway, is just something that has always captivated me. That's what motivates me.
I went to see a former president of college at West Virginia. I asked him, how do I make up my mind? And he said, well, if you're thinking of law school, I'd go. Now, the war in Vietnam was raging. You certainly didn't want to get caught in that draft. I said, all right, I'll do that, and then I'll finish my graduate degree. Well, I never did get to finish that graduate degree, but that doesn't matter.
My grandfather was a lawyer, and I remember growing up watching him, and he was very well respected. He was like an Atticus Finch. When I went to college, L.A. Law was on. I don't know if you've ever seen that. But I watched that, and I thought, yeah, that looks like a good thing I can do. And so those combinations, I said, I'm going to do what my grandfather did and get to wear nice suits like they do on TV.
So what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Took the Citizens Dispute Settlement Program and turned it into the Voluntary Mediation Program and brought the mediators into the courtroom. And after I did that for a while, the other county judges picked up on it, and we really developed a strong voluntary mediation.
I made some Lee County history when I got elected in here because there had never been a person of color who had run in a county-wide election not previously appointed to a position and had won an election. So that was a first for Lee County.
Obviously, my greatest accomplishment is my daughters. I have always been proud of the fact that I've argued a case in the U.S. Supreme Court. The counsel table, they have quill pens. I am not entirely sure those are meant to be lovely parting gifts, but my quill pen ended up in my pocket, and I now have it mounted on my office wall.
Personally, I'd say my proudest accomplishment is raising some great kids. I've got a terrific family. I've got a wonderful wife. Professionally, proud that I was a trial lawyer that wasn't afraid to try different type of cases.
I'm very happy that I've been able to have a very rewarding law career, but also I was able to balance and have a very happy family life as well and raise 5 children. So I think I'm most happy with being able to have a balanced personal and professional life.
I think as personally, my best accomplishment, I think, is my family life. And I think from a professional standpoint, it's probably several things. One would be, having served as a lawyer and a judge now for a combined 40 years. I think being a president of the Collier County Bar Association in the year 2000 is very special.
Well, that's easy. My family. One of them is the Inns of Court. There were 5 or 6 founders of the Inns of Court. Among them were Ed Cheffy, Mike McDonald, Larry Faris, myself, and Frank Baker. Now, there are just 2 of us left out of that. When I go there, I'm looking at the young members of the Inns of Court and how beautiful they work at this thing. But I also think about how we started this.
Taking children aside, because we're all happy with children, I got very involved in ethics and professionalism early in my career here. I wanted to be a real collegial bar. And so at that time, I got together a couple of people, formed the Young Lawyers section, but then got very involved through John Cardillo, got on the Professional Ethics Committee of the Florida Bar, and then got really involved in professionalism and ended up on the Professionalism Committee and worked drafting the standards of conduct. And Hugh Hayes was involved in that also. And those are what we have now for the circuit, the standards of courtesy and conduct for the lawyers practicing in the 20th Judicial Circuit. So administrative.
What is the best advice that you received, legal or otherwise?
If you're ever presented with an ethical question and you have to decide whether or not you're going to do it, don't do it.
Always, keep abreast of the law and always be prepared and, treat people with dignity.
If you touch a piece of paper more than once, you're wasting time.
Sometimes you can't argue over everything you seem unreasonable. You lose your good arguments because you've argued over the weak ones. Know when you're getting your nose bloodied, you attack those. You become involved in those, you respond to those. The other stuff, you let it go. Preserve your credibility for where it's needed.
Basically, show up, be prepared, and don't beat yourself.
Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Practice in a way that when you finish your workday or night, as the case may be, and you look in the mirror, you can be happy with the person you're looking at.
My mother, as she was leaving life, said, "Are you still persistent? Are you still determined?" I said, "Yeah, Ma, I'm still persistent and determined."
Treat others as you want to be treated too. You get more bees with honey than with vinegar.
Stay out of prison,
That is a good piece of advice.
especially Lee County, because they got Dementors.
What was your most valuable learning experience?
When I was in law school and I got a chance to do an internship in Jacksonville, and primarily we were watching the lawyers try cases.
I had a mentor who believed that you should be able to take as much responsibility as you could accept without committing malpractice. So I was arguing cases in the Florida Supreme Court when I was in my second year of practice.
Early in my career, there was an acrimonious piece of litigation. We ended up settling it. The other lawyer was pounding his chest, and I ended up telling him, "You're an idiot. We would have paid you twice as much for that had you only done this or that." And the partner whom I worked for just took me aside and said, I hope that felt good, because it was the absolute worst thing you could ever do. You're going to see that fellow around again and again and again, and now you have no credibility. You should have complimented him, told him what a great job he did, how no one else could have gotten that result for his client, and left with a friend there instead of making an enemy for the rest of your career.
When I was the first prosecutor and I was picking a jury, and the judge was older and I guess not too patient, I was going through my list of questions, and he said in front of the jury and everyone, he said, "I know this is your first trial, but you don't have to ask all these questions." Of course, I lost the trial, because as soon as the judge basically says you're inexperienced and you don't know what you're doing, the jury kind of goes along with that. But after that, I just said, I'm going to try never to embarrass a litigant or an attorney.
I think it's a culmination of my upbringing. We went from Miami to Fargo and then La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Oh, my word.
And so I had Cuban, Republican, conservative parents, but I had a lot of friends and faculty that influenced me with a liberal Midwestern, Wisconsin, Minnesota mindset. And I thought it really made me a more complete person to understand competing viewpoints.
In my firm, you had to be involved at the bar, you had to be involved in a civic organization, and you had to be involved in a charity. You had to do that or you weren't staying in the firm. And our firm was 45 years. And we made an impact. And lawyers can make a big impact. That's really why I chose law rather than being a professor. I thought lawyers could have a bigger impact on society, positive impact on society. And that's what I think they should do. Do those three things.
I had a experience in some litigation, involving some construction litigation, and I had prevailed on getting, I think it was 6 liens, I can't remember the exact number, discharged, and that lawyer became very aggressive with, poked me a little bit in the chest. At that point, that's what kind of clicked, and I said, I think I want to practice here for a while and make this a more collegial atmosphere, and that kind of propelled me to that professionals wing. I mean, that was.
Have you had any large hurdles that you've had to overcome?
I think most people will tell you that they have a little bit of stage fright, And I used to really worry about getting presented with something that I didn't know anything about.
My sisters and I were the second generation of people who had gone to college. 2 generations before that, there were people in my family that picked cotton in order to make a living. So to move from that step and be able to go to college, go to law school, and eventually become a lawyer, and then eventually become a judge, I think are things that I'm very proud of.
I remember overhearing a remark that something I had done had offended this person. I got in my car and I drove down to the courthouse, and I apologized, because what lawyers need to understand is the person who decides your face is wearing a black robe, but the person who gives you access to the black robe is the JA.
So self-doubt is a big deal, I think, as a young lawyer. At least it was for me.
I think it's an issue that we all deal with, and it's basically time management.
The greatest hurdles in my life have been those that I've experienced with regard to loss. Loss of my parents, loss of my dogs, loss of some of my friends as time has gone on. On a lesser scale, my transition as a small child, never having spoken English, from Miami to Fargo and growing up in the Midwest was a little bit of a challenge. Physically, I think, and mentally, running the 26.2 mile distance. I'm an avid runner.
Getting through the New York bar was a big hurdle for me. And moving to Florida I went from New York to South Carolina and leaving my family in New York, New Jersey really, and then moving to Florida on your own.
Probably children. You know, one of my kids had some serious medical issues. Actually, a couple of them did. And so getting past that, especially my son when he was younger, going through all that was a hurdle, and he's doing great now. So, you know, compared to them, I've got nothing to complain about. You know, that I couldn't even tell you I have hurdles compared to what they went through. So I feel lucky on that.
I tell you what, ineffective assistance of attorneys is a big challenge.
Where do you go for lunch when you're at the courthouse?
Farmers market is always good.
Used to be April's, because April's used to have good pies all the time.
I typically don't. Used to be, back in the day, everyone went to the veranda. And the joke was that more litigation got resolved in the bar of the veranda on a Friday afternoon than did in the courthouse.
I used to really like Bruno's of Brooklyn when they were open for lunch.
I never went to lunch. I would use like the lunch breaks for either reviewing cases or preparing for the docket.
You know, I usually will work at my desk and just have something light and coffee. But when I do go out, I'll go to places like Skillets or First Watch.
Larry's Lunchbox. That's one of my favorite places.
Larry's Lunchbox would have been the favorite spot for years.
We used to get these tacos from this taqueria, San Julio's, I think is what it's called, until it got shut down. It got shut down for rats.
Speaking of food, what is your favorite food?
I don't really have a favorite. Tried to vary it, but if you went out east, you could get some good Jamaican food, and I think that was one of my favorite places.
Probably barbecue chicken.
All right, who has the best barbecue in Lee County?
Miss McCarter's.
Mr. McCarter's.
Are there any good barbecue places in Collier County, or is it only in Lee County?
Lee.
Called Georgian cheese bread, yeast dough, rolled out and put in a pan with 2.5 pounds of grated Munster cheese and various spices. You then fold the dough over the top of it and bake it into this incredible loaf of cheese-filled bread.
If I'm being healthy, probably an apple. If I'm not, it's definitely some barbecue, probably ribs. I know it's on Cranford and MLK.
I would say it's not one specific dish, but I would say it's Mediterranean food as a whole. Now, I also like pancake breakfast.
Well, I like all kinds of food. I like French and Spanish and all that. But if you said one or two dishes, it would be linguine with clam sauce, fresh clams, or linguine marinara, something like that, or lasagna. Yeah.
You know, I'm a foodie, so I just can't answer one thing. Alaskan king crab and shellfish and lobster and all the... We're going to go to True Lux for that.
Yeah.
I love New Orleans food. So gumbo, jambalaya, seafood gumbo, of course, jambalaya, red beans and rice, shrimp etouffee.
We get tacos on Tuesday, and now we get it from the food trucks. But you know, we get them on Thursdays, not on Tuesdays, not on Taco Tuesday, because we get them all leftover. We get the leftover stuff.
So no more.
So what do you do in your spare time?
I enjoy reading the Bible and Bible study, and I play a little play at golf. You know, a little right, a little left, sometimes down the middle. The only thing that is as hard as playing golf is maybe understanding women.
I play a little golf every now and then.
I heard whispers that Ted Tripp, who I work with now, was a better golfer than you. Can you confirm that?
I object. mischaracterization of the prior testimony, but okay.
I cannot confirm that rumor at all. And it is strictly a rumor.
I do play golf badly, but repeatedly, with James and a very convivial group of others that play at the veranda.
I love to fish. I love to play golf. I do like to ride a bicycle, that sort of thing, and just being outdoors.
You know, I have 5 children, 5 animals, 3 grandchildren, and a crazy husband. So that pretty much takes up all my time. And he said I could say that, by the way.
You know, I very much like all sports entertainment. So I love music, concerts, sporting events. I'm a 30-plus year season ticket holder with Miami Dolphins. Spending time with family and friends. I'm also an avid runner, so I like sharing beers after long runs with my friends.
I like to read, I golf a fair amount, and I like to travel.
I used to be a fanatic about football with Tom Brady. Because going to Michigan, I was just watched every game of the Patriots and now the Tampa Bay, and now he's gone, so I'm kind of lost.
I read.
Harry Potter?
I like fiction, not Harry Potter. That's too real.
All right. What's your favorite book? Is it the Bible?
Yeah. It's a recipe for a living.
My favorite book is probably The Content of Our Character. It's a book by Sheldon Steele.
My favorite book is a book by C.S. Lewis called Mere Christianity.
It's a book by a guy named Bill Bryson. It's called A Short History of Nearly Everything.
The last book I read was The Midnight Library. I think it tells us all that we have one life and we need to be grateful for what we're given and make the most of what we're given.
Books about cosmology, not cosmetology, but cosmology. I'm totally biased on this selection. It's the book Hispanoamerica, because it was written by my dad to use in the college educational system.
It was The Land Remembered, which is about ancient Florida back in the days of the cattle drives all the way down to today.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Favorite movie?
I love One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And my cousin Vinny.
I have 2 favorite movies, I think. One is Rendition. The other one is My Cousin Vinny.
Having raised daughters, I'm going to have to go with The Princess Bride, which I think is one of the best movies of all time.
If I'm being serious, it's Dr. Zhivago. If I'm being lighthearted, it's Monty Python's Meaning of Life.
Wizard of Oz, the original. Grew up without a television, and one of our neighbors would always have us over for that movie.
One of the most influential movies in my life was when I was 8 years old up in Fargo, North Dakota. I remember watching it with my parents. Born Free.
To Kill a Mockingbird, everybody knows that. I love that movie. Dinner Rush with Danny Aiello. Waking Ned Devine, and it takes place in Ireland.
And Dances with Wolves. And then Unforgiven is another one I'll always watch over and over again with Clint Eastwood. Again, Dr. Zhivago. Forrest Gump. That's the other one. I love Forrest Gump.
Is that because they have all kinds of shrimp?
It must be. It must be some common theme here, right? And what we're talking about. It's a
Harry Potter.
One piece of advice that you'd like to share?
I think the best advice I ever got was from Martin Luther King. It's never a wrong time to do the right thing.
You know, the ends is a valuable tool for young lawyers particularly. It gives them some insight into how to practice law, the do's and don'ts, and to teach them practical things about ethics.
Analyze the problem, try and figure out a solution, and determine how we can most economically move toward that solution.
There was another lawyer that taught me that although I had the facts, I had the law on my side, I didn't have the sympathy in the case. And sometimes, Bob, you just got to put yourself in the shoes of every man and say, how are they going to view this? How is a person on the jury going to view it who doesn't really care about the facts and the law as much as you do? Just making yourself personable and relatable can make a huge difference.
Be prepared, work hard, be courteous, be professional. It's about working together and achieving a result that is consistent with the law and decorum and professional courtesy.
Mentioned earlier was to practice law in a way that your parents would be proud of you, and that when you look in the mirror, you're happy with what you've done in that day of your endeavors.
There are 3 aspects that you got to remember when you're a lawyer. You are the keeper of your client's secrets. You are the key to his freedom or her freedom. And you are the holder of and trustee of his assets. Those three things. There is no profession in the world that has those three responsibilities.
I tell all our young lawyers at the firm, I said, get involved. You know, I made really a mission to get involved in the bar-related items. And I remember Ed Sheffy was doing a lot of professionalism. I thought, you know, he was revered, and I wanted to be like you, Ed. Be kind to everyone and help others out. You never know who needs help.
I plead the fifth.
What's the funniest experience that you've ever had in the practice of law?
But I was in the courtroom and probably started off with 300 people at arraignment. It was down to 200. And this fella comes up in front of me and tells me the most outlandish, prevaricated story I think I've ever heard. I said, sir, I don't believe a word of what you said, but I'm a fair man. And if anybody in this courtroom buys your story, I'll give you a pass. One guy in the back of the courtroom raised his hand. I said, oh, I'm in trouble. Sir, are you telling me that you believed his story? He said, no, Judge, I didn't believe a word of it, but if you don't believe his story, there's no way you're going to believe mine.
I never have any incriminating stories about judges.
In a Perry Mason moment, the state attorney had a witness on the stand who had been there when the killing occurred. And the state attorney said, and do you see the person who shot the deceased in the head repeatedly in this courtroom? And the witness looked around and said, no. Would you please get off of the witness stand, stand in front of that table over there, and tell us if you recognize the person that you saw shoot the deceased? Witness gets up, walks over to our table. There's me, there's Michael, there's the client, and she picks me out. It was too late to argue alibi or anything like that, but I think the only time I've ever been accused of murder, and it was in open court.
I was representing a pet store whose macaw had bitten a patron. Issue came up whether this was a domesticated animal or a wild animal. And I said, well, it's a domesticated animal. It speaks English. The other, Joe said, well, it's a wild animal, and it's got to be wild. It's got these huge, 3-inch talons and this kind of thing, and its beak is 5 inches long. And the judge said, gentlemen, stop right here. I am not going to decide this case based on the size of some bird's pecker.
But one time we had the fence up around the courthouse where the judges would park, and we were like, well, where's Judge Sturgis? The next thing I know, he had jumped the fence to get into the courthouse. So it was just sort of a funny experience that you never knew what he was up to.
I actually had Judge McGowan, when he was a lawyer, came before me, and I can't remember if it was in county or circuit court, but it was a criminal case, and he was representing a fellow from the West Indies, and they have the British tradition there. And I remember he walked in and started referring to me as your lordship. And, that was kind of nice to hear. I said, I could get used to that. And maybe I'd even don a wig for his benefit. So it was refreshing and funny.
Trying a heavy drug case, right? It's being televised. I'm rocking on this chair, when you're pacing and waiting to jump. And I flip right over back, head over heels, or heels over head, flip right down on his back. And I think it was Judge Broussel looked at me like, is he drunk? That was funny.
And this is my very, very first hearing. So I made my argument, and Judge Carlton listened, and he said, well, I'm going to find in favor of Mr. Bass's client. You're going to go to arbitration. So I probably should have not said anything further at that point. But I said, well, Your Honor, let me explain why I think that ruling is incorrect. He said, I've made my ruling, Mr. Korn. I know I did this 2 more times, right? And he said, I have made my ruling. But I don't know, something in me said, well, one more time can't hurt. So he, at that point, stood up. I remember, I can still see it to this day. Stood up, grabbed his gavel. I have made my ruling, Mr. Korn. He takes his gavel and slams it, or walks to the side, opens the door to where chambers are, and slams the door. And the whole courtroom, everyone's looking at me. What would I do? What's wrong with that? And Ray Bass says, Jason, welcome to Naples. You're not in New York anymore.
I plead the fifth.
Wow. Can you think of any differences between practicing in Lee or Collier County, and if so, what?
You know, I'd go sit down at a table and we work out stuff with the lawyers, where sometimes the judges down there were, you know, kind of stiff on the bench. They kind of like that free and loose approach of just sitting down and reasoning things out together.
We're a little bit more casual, maybe in some respects, but still professional by all regards here in Lee County, I think.
You've got guys like Ed Sheffy who are a walking lesson in how to practice law in Collier County. We had people like Jimmy Franklin, Pat Garrity, guys who really knew how to try lawsuits. So both bars had those kinds of what I call top flight lawyers to learn from.
The biggest difference, I would say, is not so much among the lawyers, but it's among the jury panel. But you should recognize that when bringing your case, advising your clients, that sort of thing.
The bailiffs, because in Collier we had one bailiff who was with us all the time when we were at the courthouse. And in Lee, they basically shuffle them.
I think I'm the only circuit judge in our history that was involuntarily removed from Collier and moved to Lee. And I say that word involuntarily loosely. In Lee County, I was primarily in criminal court there, and we had multiple bailiffs assigned as a team. Additionally, the clerk would typically assign us one clerk. In Collier, we typically are assigned, even in criminal, one bailiff, not a team, and we have no assigned clerk.
Very little. Size is the only difference.
Really, both really good bars. I mean, they're both very friendly. We're really blessed that we have Collier and Lee, and you could go either, and a lot of the lawyers know each other from either jurisdiction. I think the difference is probably there's more judges, right, in
Right.
Lee. So
I've been in Lee County Prison. I had to go one day when somebody said that I was, holding their money when all I was doing was just holding it for them.
Oh, yeah. Is there a difference that you can think of between Lee County Jail and Collier County Jail?
Dementors.
What? Excuse me? What are dementors?
Dementors. Yeah, Lee County Jail's got dementors. They're those soul-sucking ghosts from Harry Potter. No. It is legit. I actually seen this dementor visit my suite mate when I was up in Lee County in prison, and he sucked the soul right out of my suite mate. So what he left behind was just the ruby slippers, like when Dorothy's house landed on that switch, left those slippers for me. So I put them right here.
It's like,
Do you have any particular pet peeve? And if so, what is it?
Well, my number one pet peeve is any lawyer that uses the term "with all due respect," because they heard that on Law and Order, and it's anything but. But I don't like liars. I really don't like bullies, and I can't stand ass.
Is during jury trials, I never like lawyers to wander away from the podium.
Currently, it's people that send me emails that want a return receipt for the email, which I hate.
That feels very specific.
People who put conflict over resolution.
I would tell you, as a young lawyer, my pet peeve was when well-established lawyers like Ted Tripp would tell the judge, I know there's a case on that, Judge, here it is. And as a young lawyer, I'd say, I don't know that case. He doesn't have it either. How can he tell the judge that?
When attorneys were discourteous to each other, especially in the courtroom, when the attorneys would be difficult for the sole purpose of being difficult.
Things that catch a clothes hanger that won't pull off the rack or something like that. Okay, just silly. Being unkind to my judicial assistant. Cover letters that don't succinctly state the background of what's presented. When advocates don't properly estimate the total hearing time needed.
People who don't rake the sand in the sand traps.
always doing last things minute. Everything's a fire drill. I tell preparation. You know, you're always trying to put out fires. You're never going to be at your best. I don't like people that are licking their fingers while they're eating food.
I mean, besides dementors, I'd have to say, just be lying. I'm talking about that candy girl. That candy girl that got me here. Remember the one that lied?
I do remember her.
On that, yeah. When last time we had the depot?
Oh, yeah, I do remember her.
I had to fire her.
All right. What do you prefer? Star Wars, Star Trek, Dancing with the Stars, none?
No, I basically quit watching regular TV years ago.
Star Wars. Mr. Spock.
That's Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm going with neither. None of the above.
I'm probably old enough. Star Trek would be it, and Mr. Spock, I know he is in Star Trek.
I think Star Trek, just because of the life lessons that are in each episode.
You know, I love the Star Trek series of movies.
I don't watch any of it.
No stars.
No stars.
Star Trek. But only the one with Chris Pine was the best movie.
Say what?
No,
I don't even know what all that stuff is.
No opinion.
Well, I had a case of first impression. The legislature had passed a law that made it a crime for a doctor to be culpably negligent. The first doctor in the state of Florida ever convicted of criminal negligence.
A toddler that had died in the custody of a caretaker. Transdental illumination, which is you would take a bite mark, turn it inside out, and then try and match the teeth marks up to the bite mark on the person and so forth.
My most memorable case was the one that ended up in the U.S. Supreme Court. It was 11 years of pro bono representation. Potter Stewart, God bless him, in what's called a well-reasoned dissent. You can assume from that I lost, which I did.
With all due respect.
with all due respect.
I had a local lady as my swimming expert. She testified that it was completely possible that my client did exactly what he said he did. The other side attempted to impeach her on cross-examination and said, "How much are you getting paid for this testimony?" And her response was, "You can get paid for this?"
Well, the one, I would have to say it was the SIBO case. And that's just because I think it had the biggest impact on the concurrent loss doctrine. I want to say it was just like the full package. It was just like a family, but we got it done.
The independent traditional Seminole Nation versus Collier County. A code enforcement action was commenced due to some cheeky huts that were found on some agricultural land in the eastern part of the county. It was on private land. We were able to come up with a mutually respectful solution that involved a cultural use exemption to the land development code. And in the end, they actually had a traditional dinner at the village as a result of all of that.
One was a criminal case in which it was murder 2, in which my client killed 2.
Allegedly.
My client was charged with killing 2 coaches at Lely. And between the time of the loss of the case and the time we went to argue, California versus Edwards came out, which was right on point. Reversed the conviction, retried it, and we won.
It's a Lely guardhouse case that went on for years, where the Attorney General of Florida and Collier County attorneys were trying to fight the homeowners to remove the guardhouse that's at the front. But because of that, I got to know Judge Monleash really well, and he was just really professional, a pleasure to deal with, even though we were on a very hotly contested issue.
I don't post.
Social media at all. Never have. So many inherent dangers involved with it, just didn't want to be involved with it.
I have never posted anything on social media.
That I was at my niece's wedding in New Orleans, having a good time and realizing that I'm kind of a one-night wonder at this point in my life. One night on Bourbon Street is quite enough.
I don't use any social media.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm not on. I'm off the grid, or whatever they call it.
I don't know what to do with Twitter, and I don't know what to do with any of the other things. I'm stuck on email and text.
Nothing, because I don't have social media.
I'm in prison. We don't have access to social media.
Westlaw or LexisNexis?
What's what?
Westlaw is what I grew up on.
I prefer books.
I'm a Westlaw guy.
No preference.
Definitely Westlaw.
And books.
No, I got people to do that. I'm gonna hire that one guy too you talked about. What was his name again?
Chris Donovan.
Oh, okay.
Do you prefer Zoom or in person?
And so Zoom is amazing.
In person.
I am a dedicated in-person person.
I think you can communicate so much more effectively in person.
In person, for sure.
I don't like it. Now, of course, Some of that is because I'm technically challenged.
Well, I think in person is better for certain things.
I'm in prison, but I work remotely, and I have an iPad. I sold a lot of cigarettes for this.
The relationship between lawyers is so important, and it makes life easier for the judge and also certainly for all the people that come in front, and gives them a stronger feeling about the court system and that they're going to get justice when folks get along and do things the right way.
My suggestion to M members is to remember professionalism, ethics, and legal excellence. Those are the three things that I talk about when I talk about the ends of court.
I've often told young lawyers, you need to understand that if you're suing somebody, the person on the other side is a potential client. You want them to hire you when you're done.
Try to be above the moment.
I never could predict the verdicts. I was
remember you
always
saying
wrong.
that.
It's been a privilege to be a member of the Collier County Bar Association. I hope that people continue to realize the importance of diversity in our society and in the profession.
I think that anybody who's practicing in Southwest Florida should feel grateful. This is by far the best bar area in the state, and I know that from statistics.
You know, how you're perceived in the community, that's how clients perceive you too. So you want to be one of those lawyers. I always say the attic is finished.
I mean, I left some goodie bags right at the door for some of you people. You know, I heard that Lee County likes a little Maker's Mark, and I heard that Collier likes water, which seems pretty normal for me. No. My name's Henry Darlin, a.k.a. Ruby Tuesdays. I'm sorry. Damn it!
Ruby Tuesdays. That place was shut down for rats too. How on earth can you say that business is good right now?
Son, I've been running it since. Let me rephrase that. Oh, you know, I've been running it since. God, I keep messing up. Let's try it again. Sorry, man. I've been running it all from MLK to Port Royal since man, I gotta work on that.
Do you get that in Collier County or Lee County for the most part?
I mean, I've been in prison in both, so both. Would be lying.
Oh man, and
Do that.
And how do you catch them in lies?
I plead the fifth.